Hello, welcome. This song is really cool because it utilizes a lot of glitches and quirks with and about the MK1. This song involves auditory illusions, glitches, cool tricks. I hope you're able to get some cool information out of this, regardless if you have an MK1 or an MK2. A tutorial that will be very helpful for you today is my how to write sheet music and notes for your loop station. I also recommend that you watch the original version as well, so then you can see how all of this comes together. With all that said, let's get started. So we have Abduction. This is a 3-star track on a scale of 1 to 5. It's not too bad. It uses some fairly straightforward beatboxing techniques, and it's more in the execution that makes this a little difficult, especially with the second drop. You have to navigate the track effects menus pretty quickly. A lot of people should be able to perform this with a little bit of practice. Here are the parameters to this track. Go ahead and pause, set up your parameters, and then come on back and we'll start working on this song. The first step is our pre-step because it's in bold. We are leaving an empty track 3 and we are turning on input effects C because it's a delay. I don't want it to just start making noise as soon as I get to this menu or this memory. The first 3 tracks that we're going to make is actually pretty complicated, or complex, I should say, and how it works. To pull it off, to do it, is actually very easy. What we're going to do is we're going to do a kick into the microphone, just a single kick, and I'm going to turn the line out for the metronome, so you have that. But we are going to use a property with the MK1 right off the bat. The property that we are using, because the delay time, the way delay bases work, is it's rapidly putting out a sound every, in this case, 26 milliseconds. I'm going to be doing a kick into the mic, and that's going to be, if I slowed it down super slow, it goes every 26 milliseconds. Well, this loop is at 120 BPM. That is not aligning with the measure. What that means is when that track loops after one measure, there's going to be a point in which the sound is going to be off. So it's going to go or something like that. And that sound is going to create a little bit of a pop that you'll hear in the effects. When you record a bass line, you will hear, and I'll play this one without any effects, you will hear it kind of sound different when it loops, even though it's all one consistent sound. And we're going to take advantage of that with the phaser specifically. And the panning delay is going to pan that glitch sound back and forth between the two speakers. We also have a synth here, and that's just going to be off for now. But notice that that is the thing that is being affected by the track effects knob. We will need that in a future step. So when you go to save this, all the parameters, make sure you double tap track effects A, so then it is the last effect that was touched, so then the knob gets affected by that. All right, that's enough yapping. Let's go into, I'll show you this glitch here with track 5, and let's go. So you can hear that little glitch sound. However, something interesting happens. It's gone when you stop the track. However, if you mute the track and then fader up, that glitched sound will still be present. So now it's gone, and it's gone forever. You'll never be able to get that little click back. So there's a couple things to keep in mind in order for this glitch to work. One thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go into your memory, scroll all the way over to record action. I have it on record play because I don't want it to do any overdubbing to the next part of that. Otherwise, I'd have to time this knob turn perfectly. I'm not going to do that. So we will keep that muted for now so we don't lose that. The next step is we will be doing track 3 now. And the reason that I have an empty track on track 3 is because I need to make sure I get the timing for this loop. Otherwise, the whole loop will be shifted if I don't record this at the right moment. Once I'm on the last measure, which is now, I will delete the track 3 so then I can start it at the very start. I don't have to worry about overdubbing it properly. And I'll quantize, and I'm just going to hum a D sharp 3 into the microphone, and then I'm going to activate another glitch. This is similar to the pitch bend glitch that is in songs like Crunch Time and Easy by Biscuit. It's a little bit different though. What you're doing is when there's no sound happening and I adjust the input level, nothing ends up happening. However, if I'm making sounds and I adjust this, you'll hear a static that is in the microphone, and it'll record that static as well because that is part of the signal. Pretty cool. I'm also going to be doing that on track 4 as well, and because it'll have a panning delay, which we have the assign set up for, it will pan that sound, and it'll sound like kind of scary noises, ambient stuff. Because of the way that I set up the assigns, you just have to push track 3 play and then track 4 play, and all of this will happen automatically. All you have to do is focus on getting the right note and changing your hand position. All right, so here we go. So again, I am just holding the microphone in my hand like this, under my nose for the humming portion. Then I fade it out and switch to this position to my mouth, so then I can record the same exact note through my mouth hole instead of my nose hole to give it a different resonance. I am fading both of those in, so I'm not just going I'm going so it kind of fades in. Originally, I would just do the E4 note for the entire time using the Sorrow horn. As you can guess, this is a technique that comes from Sorrow. He has this horn. And you can do that the whole time, or you can just improv as long as you stay within the key of the track. While all this is happening, by the way, because you have this off and that's the last thing that you touched, you can just scroll over to Filter, go over to Cutoff, adjust your knob to about 1.5 o'clock, and get it to 67. You can go into the menu to adjust the value manually. This cutoff value from the filter we're going to use on the kick later on. And this comes from the song King of the Groove by Biscuit. I add a little bit more to it to fit with this track, which we'll get into that later, but that's where this filter value comes from. Next thing that we're going to do is create our drums. So our drums, we're going to start out with a rim shot, and we're going to do that with a reverb. We're going to set this at 2 o'clock. To turn it down just a little bit. Then we're going to do that on our track 1, which is going to be reversed after it records. And we're going to very quickly change our reverb to a ring modulator on C. And as you heard, I pitched the rim shot. and you can change the pitch of your ring shot by changing the resonance of your mouth. So the sound is happening at the back of the mouth, the back of the tongue. So if you change the size of your mouth, that'll change the frequency or the resonance of how the rim shot comes out. So if you have a tighter mouth, it'll be higher. And if you have a wider mouth and open that up, it'll be lower. So you're going to basically do a high rim shot and then a low rim shot. So then when it reverses and flips, it'll be in the right place. Here, you're going to quickly go over to ring modulator because you want to hit the ring modulator at that point right there. And you're going to do I call it a club inward kick, but it's essentially a gabber kick, if you know what a gabber kick is. What we're doing is you're using the side of our mouth here. And that'll activate the ring mod frequency that we'll be using. Notice that I only record or I only overdub for the kick because I don't want too much feedback because we're going to get a ton of feedback when we record. Moving on to the next step, we're going to use that King of the Groove kick, but we're going to add in, just go 2 to the right for an EQ. And this is why it was important for us to record the gabber kicks or the club kicks at the point that we did. So then we are recording the last one here. So we have all of this time there to change the input effects C to the EQ and turn on the kick and maxing out the EQ on B. We have one more thing to add to our drum kit, but we're going to pause that for a moment and change this to a filter and do a powerful tongue roll to activate a sub bass because we're going to lose a lot of our bass here through the effects. I want a good bass, but the other reason that we're doing that is because this is going to act as a compression knob. It's a really cool technique. I don't know anyone else who's done this before, but if you have a powerful enough bass, and because we have this at such a high play level, that will compress the other sounds that are playing, which is pretty dope. So let's go ahead and make that. The last thing that we're going to record now is our hi-hat pattern. We're going to do that by activating our last EQ. So the pattern is just like that, but with my hi-hat EQ. Love using my hi-hat EQ, but we're going to add another higher frequency in there so that it cuts through and kind of sits above the mix when we add it in and take it away later on. We have everything recorded, so we stop and undo track 1. All while this is happening, while you're setting up tracks 1 and 2, 3, 4, and 5 are playing. This crazy thing is going on. And what we're going to be doing from here is we're going to be doing a lot of preparatory work to set up for the first drop. What you're going to do is you're now officially going to use the synth to create this really cool filtery kind of ambient sound. This is a technique I discovered many, many years ago with the decay. While you let it decay, it's almost like it filters out the sound. What we're going to do is we're going to use each one of those moments to create a different texture while we're setting up the input effects for later in the song. So it ends up sounding like this. each one of those pulses will have a different sound because we're increasing the balance for a moment to let that peak through. It'll be captured in the panning delay because it's below the synth, and it'll play that sound. Because this is playing the entire time, anytime you stop and start, it'll do that. Anytime you max out a fader, it will do that. Or if you turn the effect off and then back on, it'll also reset the decay. So that's the technique that we're going to be using to do that while we set up this. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. This EQ, but that'll be a ring modulator. You are going to have this loop once, and then you're going to mute it. This will be playing, and then on the last measure, you're going to stop it. That'll allow it to fade out, and then you're going to slowly turn this up, and we get this cool sound. I mute track 1 so that I can see where the halfway point is. And then I bring in this bass. All right, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be going into the microphone, but you're going to, if this is your mouth here, you're going to do this. And the reason we're going to do this is because we're technically going to use two synths. The first synth has no decay, and the second synth does, but instead of trying to change the resonance and the decay of the synth mid-track, we're just going to take advantage of the way the synth works. If you notice that if you make a sound into the microphone with the 3 input settings, and you just go ooh, or even ooh, like fade in your voice, it'll shoot a laser, which we don't want yet. However, if you start the microphone from a distance and just go ooh while bringing the microphone to your face, the laser sound will happen at a much lower volume, and then it will come in. So let me show you that. Really cool technique. That is what we're going to be doing because I don't want a sharp laser sound to interrupt this transition. So let's look at what that looks like in context. So then from here, we're going to mute tracks 4 and 5 and undo track 1 to get us set up for this. While we set up the track effects now. Then what we're going to do is we're going to swap 1 through 3 with 4, and then we're going to set up track 3. What you're going to be doing is you're going to set up track 3 so then it's ready to go, and then you're going to fader up track 5, and that's going to, again, have the decay happen on the synth, and that will interact with the flanger and the lo-fi. We are going to be flicking the knob on the ring mod as we go into the mic, and we're going to flick it, mute it, and then flick it, and then leave it at 12 o'clock. Let's see what that looks like. It's made. It's a really cool sound, and I am so happy I found it. It sounds cool forward as well. You can probably do some really cool rhythm with it. When you reverse it, it just sounds so cool. All right, let's go ahead and set up for the drop. The drop, we're going to want to get into the flanger menu, so we can change this one to the right to a half note. We're going to do a really cool auditory illusion, so let's do that. All right, so what's happening here? A few things. One is we're using that compression technique I mentioned earlier. We're putting this at about halfway, but you can manipulate it to wherever it sounds best for your venue or the acoustics of your room that you're practicing in. This crazy crap here is a slicer, but as you can see, we don't have a slicer. So how's this working? This uses an auditory illusion. I am a professional magician, so I like to incorporate auditory illusions in my songs. The auditory illusion that I'm using, I think it's called the McGurk effect. It's the illusion where if you see someone saying the word ba, 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 and then the word fa, 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 depending on which video you watch, it'll sound either ba or fa. I'm using that illusion to create a slicer that doesn't exist. I include that in my notes because I want that auditory illusion of that slicer to come in. This motion, this chopping motion, is very slicer-like, but I'm going to be using this motion to create a tremolo in there. So that's why I'm doing the hand gestures and why they're important. But let's go ahead and start this up again. So you see how I'm using that auditory illusion there to create what sounds like a tremolo, but there is no tremolo. But you hear it because of what you're seeing. We're down to a 26th sample rate because we want to hit that note. We can play with this knob a little bit. That's going to affect our balance and give us different textures that way. We want to also change the flanger to one measure when we bring in this sound. We're just going to turn off our synth and go into recording for the next transition, which we're going to say the words critical error. It's similar to the King of the Groove biscuit technique that he uses in a lot of songs with the lo-fi, but I'm activating it via turning the effect on and off because of how it interacts with the vocal distortion. We also are touching this so we can turn the track effects on for track 4 by pushing the edit button to quickly turn those on. And then we're going to go into the meltdown phase by going Mayday, Mayday, Mayday into the ring mod. And we're also going to quickly change the effect lo-fi to a ring mod. All in the meantime, we are also going to go into here, change the decay from 99 to 100 to set up for the last transition. then going to change this to a lo-fi, and we're going to quickly go into the menu for the sample rate, and we're going to get into another cool glitchy texture that sounds very similar to the pitch bend glitch that is in Crunch Time and Easy by Biscuit. This is different, however. This is completely different, where you have a little bit more control over the note as well as when the pops actually happen using this lo-fi and vocal distortion and synth combination. We're going to control that via the sample rate, and that's going to sound like this. We're going to mute these two tracks, and we're going to turn their effects on while all of this is playing. And we also want the track 5 edit to be off, so we're just getting the bass line. I'm adjusting this to get to the frequency that I want. If I want more pops, I just bring these in. Get that up to 26 because I want a certain note to happen later on. Turn that on. Turn that on. And because we have this faded, it'll stop automatically, and so we can kind of do this crushing motion, which will happen exactly one measure after we push all stop. And that is it. That is Abduction. I hope you got a lot of useful tricks and tips and kind of understand the methodology behind all this cool stuff. This is what happens when I make a track. I really like to exploit the MK1 through its full potential, including a lot of weird, quirky stuff. Thank you for sticking around for this long tutorial. My name is Playgue. I'll see you in the next one.